The dog's barking wouldn't stop. Jedediah Kane stepped off the porch, one hand shielding his eyes from the burning sun, the other resting heavy on the Winchester slung across his shoulder. The dust hadn't settled yet. There'd been movement near the fence line. Something too slow to be coyote, too quiet for trouble. He moved cautiously, boots crunching over dry brush, the desert heat wrapping around him like a funeral shroud. Then he saw them, for bodies, barely more than shadows in the sand, crumpled just beyond the barbed wire. 3 small figures clung together in a heap, and one woman hunched over them, arms curled like a broken wing. None of them moved. "God help me," Jed muttered, lowering his rifle. He climbed through the wire and knelt beside the nearest child. Her skin was cracked and blistered, lips split, breathing shallow. Her eyes opened just enough to look up at him. No fear, no confusion, just quiet surrender. She closed them again and didn't move. The woman stirred. A cough rattled in her chest as she lifted her face, streaked with dust and blood. Her voice scraped like gravel. "They need water." Jed didn't speak. He hoisted one child into his arms, then another, then the third. Last, he crouched and reached for her. She resisted at first, weakly, then slumped against his shoulder. Back across the fence, through the cracked yard gate, and into the cool gloom of his old ranch house, Jed laid them down, one by one, on the parlor rug and brought the tin basin and ladle. He tilted water past dry lips, slow and careful, until their throats twitched and they swallowed. Only then did he let himself breathe. The woman leaned on her elbow, watching him. Jed sat back, sweat streaking his temples. "What happened?" She didn't answer. He stood, took a second basin out to the pump, filled it, then returned. He caught her eyes again, dark, alert, measuring everything. "Name's Kane," he said. "Jed." Her voice was dry and cracked. "Clara." No handshake, no smile. That night, he laid them on his son's old bed, brought out blankets from the cedar chest, and fed them what little food he had left, cornbread and dried peaches. Clara tore the bread into strips and fed each girl by hand. They didn't cry. They didn't speak. They just chewed and stared into the dark, like animals too tired to be afraid anymore. When the girls finally slept, Clara sat at the kitchen table, her hands in her lap. Jed poured a tin cup of well water and slid it across to her. She took it, nodding once. "How far you walk?" he asked. 3 days. Maybe 4. "Anyone with you?" "No." He leaned back in his chair. "You running from something?" She met his eyes across the lantern light. "I'm running from someone." He didn't push, just nodded and stood. "You'll stay in the house. I'll take the barn." Clara didn't argue. Before he left, he paused in the doorway. "Girls got names?" She hesitated. "Abby, Ruth, Lottie, twins, triplets." He grunted. "That's rare. They were born during a thunderstorm. My husband said God was showing off." "You a widow?" "I buried him near Wichita." Jed didn't say anything more. He walked out to the barn and lay on the old hay mattress, arms folded across his chest, listening to the silence that had taken root in his house ever since the fever took his wife and boy. Now there were voices again, soft, breathing, alive. He didn't sleep much. The next morning, the girls sat by the front steps, each holding a chipped tin cup of milk. Jed watched from the corral, pretending to check the fence line, but really just listening. Abby was humming. Ruth picked at her dress. Lottie leaned against Clara's leg and stared at the dirt. Clara was scrubbing the porch with a rag and a bucket of gray water. "You don't have to do that," Jed said, walking up. "I know," she replied, not stopping. "You planning on staying?" "I don't plan anymore. Just fix what's in front of me." He nodded, thumb hooked in his belt. "You any good with stock? I can hold a rope and gut a chicken." "Then you'll do fine." The next day, she was patching holes in the roof with leftover canvas. Jed found her standing on a barrel, hammering with steady hands. The girls chased each other in the yard, shrieking quietly, the way children do when they're not sure they're allowed to be happy. That evening, Clara cooked a rabbit stew using dried herbs Jed had forgotten were in the pantry. The scent filled the house, warm and sharp. The girls ate like wolves. Jed barely touched his plate, too busy watching Clara slice bread with the calm focus of someone trained to survive. He noticed a knife. It wasn't just a kitchen tool. The blade had weight, balance, the kind of blade you keep sharpened for more than onions. She used it well, hand low, wrist angled, the blade flicking clean. You a cook? I've done things. That's a soldier's grip. She looked at him. Her face didn't change. Scout. Union. 47th Regiment. Cut my hair short and lied about my name. Jed raised his eyebrows, but said nothing. Before you ask, she added, I was better with a knife than half the boys with rifles. He nodded once. You still carry? Clara slid the blade back in her skirt and stood. Not by choice, but yes. Night fell like a curtain over the ranch. The air cooled, but the silence deepened. Jed sat on the porch, smoking the stub of a cigar. Clara came out, arms folded, her eyes fixed on the horizon. You've heard of Gideon Pike? Jed's hand paused. Preacher? He ain't a preacher. I've heard stories. He finds women like me. Like them. Says he's saving souls. But he's building something darker. Takes the boys for labor. Takes the girls for worse. Jed's voice dropped low. He after you? She didn't blink. He's never let anyone go. I ran. He'll come. Jed stood slowly, tossing the cigar into the dirt. Then he'll find something different waiting. Clara looked at him sideways. You still know how to shoot, Kane? His eyes were on the stars now. I used to shoot the wings off buzzards from a quarter mile. Used to. He didn't answer. She stepped back inside, closing the door behind her. And Jed stood there, long into the night, watching the dark. The wind shifted, brushing dry grass against the fence. The kind of silence that meant something was coming. Something mean. Something wrong. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like waiting to die. The sound of hammering stopped him cold. Jed stepped through the barn doorway, hand resting instinctively near his hip. On the roof, Clara balanced on a rickety ladder, sweat streaking her brow, nailing fresh boards into the rafters like she'd been born with a hammer in her hand. You planning to fix the whole damn ranch? He asked. Clara didn't look down. You planning to stop me? Jed leaned against a post, watching her work. She moved like she didn't care if she fell. Like pain was a familiar thing. The ladder swayed, her boots slipped, and before Jed could shout, she caught herself with a quiet grunt and kept going. Inside, the girls' laughter bounced from wall to wall. They were drawing pictures in the dust with twigs, making shapes only they understood. For a while, that sound had been absent from this land. Now it was everywhere. Clara climbed down, wiping her hands on her skirt. Roofs patched. Might hold till fall. Jed nodded. You ever done ranch work? I've done worse. He didn't ask what that meant. He didn't have to. Later that day, the sheriff's hat appeared on the horizon long before the man himself. Jed spotted it from the corral, riding in slow like he carried a secret that weighed too much. Sheriff Harlan was a quiet man, but he never came out this far without reason. Jed met him at the gate. Something broke in town. Harlan dismounted, dusting off his duster. You been getting visitors? Jed glanced toward the house. Clara stood in the doorway, eyes narrowed. Maybe, Jed said. Why? Harlan dropped his voice. Man named Pike rode through Mesa Ridge 2 days back. 6 riders with him, asking about a woman with 3 kids. Jed's face didn't change. And he's offering gold for her. A lot of it. Said she's a runaway. Said the kids are his. Liar, Clara said from behind them. Harlan turned. She stepped off the porch slowly, hands empty, jaw tight. He's a slaver, she said. He uses the cloth to take women, then sells them. The boys go to rail camps. The girls worse. Harlan frowned. There's no proof of that. He's slick, carries papers, makes it all legal. Legal doesn't make it right. Jed shifted his weight. He come this way? Not yet, Harlan said. But he's close. Thought you should know. Clara stared at the sheriff. If he shows up in Perdition Creek, are you going to stop him? Harlan didn't answer. She turned and walked back inside. Jed studied the man. You going to sell her out? No, Harlan said. But someone might. You know how folks are. Jed gave a single nod. The conversation ended. That night, King didn't sleep. He sat at the edge of the bed in the barn, the air thick with dust and silence, staring at the trapdoor in the floorboards. For 10 years, he hadn't touched what was buried under there. Not since the fever took Ruth and Matthew. Not since the war ended and he made a promise to the dead. But now the past was clawing its way back. He pried the trap open. The rifle was wrapped in oilskin, still oiled, still clean. A Sharps .50 caliber, long barrel, balanced perfectly. He ran his fingers over it like a priest with a cross. The weight felt right. Heavy, yes, but honest. Clara watched from the doorway. "You're digging up ghosts," she said. He didn't look up. "I buried the wrong parts of myself." Clara stepped inside, lit lantern in hand. Her face was hard. Not angry. Not sad. Just ready. "You know how to use that?" she asked. "I used to drop men from 600 yards. And now?" He slid a single round into the chamber, slow and sure. "Now I'm remembering why I stopped." The next day, Clara handed him a tin of coffee. "He'll come soon." "I know. I'm not running again." Jed sipped, then set the tin down. "You want to fight? He'll get one." Her voice lowered. "He won't come alone. He never does." He nodded. That afternoon, she practiced in the barn with her knife. Not like a dance. Like a butcher. Jed watched her movements, efficient, deadly. No flair. Just death, measured and fast. "Where'd you learn that?" he asked. Clara didn't stop moving. "A man tried to drag me behind a church tent once. I learned real quick." Jed's voice was flat. "You ever shoot?" She pulled a revolver from beneath her skirts. "Well kept. Military issue." She flipped the chamber open, spun it, clicked it shut. Better than most. That night, they sat on the porch. The girls slept inside, curled up together in his wife's old quilts. Jed lit a match with his thumb. "I buried my son under that cottonwood. 12 years old. Fever took him in 2 days." Clara said nothing. "My wife followed not long after. I told myself I'd never raise a weapon again." Clara stared into the dark. "Some oaths are meant to be broken." A coyote yipped in the distance. "They say Pike brands his prisoners," she whispered. "Burns them with scripture. Like he's saving them." Jed clenched his jaw. "Then we'll see how close to God he feels with a bullet through his gut." She turned to him, eyes glinting in the moonlight. "You're not who I thought you were. Neither are you." In the morning, the triplets found Clara cleaning her revolver on the table. Lottie asked if they were leaving again. "No, baby," Clara said softly, brushing hair from her face. "We're staying this time." The girls didn't understand the weight of those words. But Jed did. And when he saw Clara that morning, standing tall in the light of his front porch, pistol at her side, eyes scanning the horizon, he understood something else too. This wasn't just his land anymore. It was a battlefield. And for the first time in years, he was ready. The saloon doors creaked open like a coffin lid. Gideon Pike stepped inside Perdition Creek, boots echoing off the hardwood, black coat dragging dust behind him. 5 riders followed, fanning out like carrion birds. The townsfolk froze mid-sentence. Glasses paused halfway to lips. The piano stopped. The bartender dropped his rag. Pike removed his hat, revealing a silver cross pinned to his shirt, blackened with age. He smiled, not with warmth, just with teeth. "I'm looking for a woman," he said. No one answered. He stepped closer to the bar, slow and deliberate. "Name's Clara. Travels with 3 girls. Pretty, dark-haired, quiet. You'd know if you'd seen them." Sheriff Harlan stood up from a corner table. His badge caught the light like a warning. "Ain't seen her." Pike's grin stayed. "That's so. She's not here," Harlan said again. Pike tilted his head. "I'm off Aaron Gold. Not trouble. But trouble comes easy if I'm lied to." Harlan stepped closer. "This town don't sell people." Pike chuckled. "This town barely sells whiskey. I'm sure it sells whatever keeps it alive." Behind the bar, old Cooper lowered his eyes. The bartender swallowed hard. No one met the preacher's gaze. Pike leaned in. "You hear anything, you send word to Kane's ranch. That's where I'll be." He turned on his heel and strode back out, spurs singing across the floorboards. Dust swirled in his wake. Jed hammered the last board over the barn's north window. Clara stood beside him, eyes scanning the hills. She hadn't spoken in an hour. The triplets were asleep in the hayloft, tucked under blankets, a shotgun hidden beneath the ladder. "He's in town," she said. Jed didn't ask how she knew. "Then he's coming. I want the girls out of here." Jed shook his head. "You leave, he wins." Clara turned sharply. "They're children, and if he finds you on the road, they'll be corpses." She said nothing. He stepped back from the wall, breathing hard. I'll send them to the creek bend. Take the old mare. Hide them in the arroyo. You and I hold here. Clara's jaw tensed. You sure? Jed looked at her. Really looked. The scar along her collarbone. The burn marks on her wrist. The pistol she hadn't let go of in 2 days. I'm sure, he said. The preacher arrived at sundown. Dust rolled ahead of him like fog. Jed spotted them from the windmill, 6 riders slow, unhurried. Not scouts. Not hunters. Just men who knew fear traveled faster than bullets. Clara crouched behind a fence post, rifle steadied across the gate. Jed took the rooftop, the Sharp's rifle laid out before him, bullets lined in a neat row beside a canteen and a stub of jerky. The sun bled into the hills. Shadows stretched like knives across the ranch. A rider peeled off and approached the gate. White flag tied to his saddle horn. Jed aimed down the scope. The man wore a preacher's collar and a bastard smile. Jedediah Kane. Pike called out, I've come for what's mine. Jed didn't move. You're harboring a fugitive and stolen property. I've got papers signed by a judge in El Paso. Says them girls are wards of the state. Says she's a thief and a whore. Still no answer. Pike raised his voice. You give her to me, no one else has to die. Clara stood from behind the fence. The sun caught her outline, sharp, calm, still as iron. I'm right here, Gideon. Pike blinked. He hadn't seen her. You want me? Clara called. Come take me. Pike's grin widened. You think he can protect you? This land's full of graves, darling. I'll dig one more. Clara raised her rifle. Jed pulled the trigger. The first rider dropped before Pike finished blinking. A hole the size of a fist opened in his chest, and he slammed backward off his horse like a rag doll. The silence that followed cracked like lightning. Pike shouted, Kill 'em all. Gunfire erupted. Clara dove behind the trough, returning fire. Jed dropped his second man mid-charge, the Sharps kicking like a mule under his shoulder. Dust flew. Horses screamed. Lead cracked off the barn wall. One rider broke left, flanking. Clara spun, dropped to a knee, and fired 3 shots in tight succession. The man tumbled into a fence post, blood trailing behind him. Another circled behind the corral. Jed adjusted, exhaled, and sent a bullet through his spine. The man pitched forward into the dirt, rifle spinning from his hand. 2 left. Pike was shouting orders, ducking behind a wagon, firing wild. Clara climbed onto the porch, reloading, hair plastered her forehead with sweat. 2 more. Jed shifted again. A shot cracked past his ear. The last gunman was in the hayfield, moving fast. Too fast. Then Clara's revolver spoke, twice. The rider jerked sideways, screamed, and slammed in the barn wall. Only Pike remained. He rose from behind the wagon. Blood spattered across his collar. His face had gone pale wild. Which? He screamed at Clara. You and your bastard brats. Jed climbed down from the roof, rifle in hand. You want her, he said. Voice even. You come through me. Pike reached for his gun. Jed didn't flinch. 1 shot. The preacher hit the dirt hard, gasping. His chest heaved, boots twitching, hands clawing at the dust. Clara stepped forward, revolver aimed, breathing hard. He ain't dead. Jed chambered another round, slow and deliberate. Clara nodded once. Jed pulled the trigger. Silence fell. Only the wind moved now. In the distance, the triplets peeked out from the arroyo, the mare nudging them gently forward. Jed lowered the rifle and exhaled. Clara holstered her revolver, shoulders sagging. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. Bootsteps echoed through Perdition Creek like distant thunder. Jedediah Kane rode in slow, dust clinging to his coat. The preacher's body slung over the saddle behind him like a sack of spoiled grain. Blood crusted the black coat, and Pike's silver cross swung loose with every hoofbeat, clinking softly, mocking in death just as it had in life. The townsfolk gathered without speaking. They came out from behind barrels, out of shops, out from under porches. No one said a word. They just stared. Jed stopped in front of the saloon. The doors creaked open. Sheriff Harlan stood there, face pale, hat in hand. Jed dismounted, yanked the preacher's body down, and let it thud into the dirt. Thought I'd bring back what was owed, he said. No one moved. Jed reached into his duster and pulled something small, shining, a single silver bullet, and tossed it at the preacher on the saloon steps. It bounced, rolled once, and landed at the sheriff's feet. "You knew," Jed said, voice low. Harlan didn't deny it. Jed stepped close. "You knew what he was, and you said nothing." "He had papers," Harlan muttered. "So did every devil in a judge's coat," Jed growled. "If you ever take gold over truth again, I'll come back. And I won't bring a body. I'll leave one." Harlan's face went white. Jed turned, mounted up, and rode out without another word. Behind him, the silence of Perdition Creek cracked under the weight of its own shame. By the time he reached the ranch, the sun was low, casting long red shadows across the dust. Clara stood on the porch with the girls. They didn't smile. They didn't run. They just waited, silent and steady, like they knew the story wasn't finished yet. Jed dismounted, tired in a way bullets couldn't touch. "Done?" Clara asked. He nodded. "Buried the past." She stepped closer, brushed blood off his sleeve with her thumb. "What now?" Jed looked at the house, the fields, the cottonwood tree swaying slow in the wind. "We live." They buried Pike behind the stables. Clara insisted. "No man, not even a monster, deserves to rot in the open." Jed dug the hole himself. Took most of a day. He didn't speak, didn't curse. Just worked, steady and grim. Clara stood watch with the triplets nearby, silent as prayer. When it was done, they didn't mark the grave. No stone, no cross, just dirt, quiet and final. Later that night, Jed sat beneath the cottonwood, the same tree where his wife and son lay beneath the earth. Clara joined him without a word. They sat together for a long time. "Never thought I'd see this ranch alive again," he said. "You brought it back," Clara replied. He shook his head. "No, you did." She looked at him. "We both did. Together." A breeze stirred the leaves above them, soft and cool. The girls laughed in the distance, chasing fireflies with tin cups. Jed smiled for the first time in years. Word spread quick. They say a preacher came to Perdition Creek with fire and hate and left in the dirt. They say a woman with eyes like storm clouds and a knife like lightning stood beside a widower who'd sworn never to kill again, but did. They say the Kane Ranch grew quiet after that. Not silent, just peaceful. Clara planted a garden. Jed fixed the roof. The triplets chased chickens and named them after outlaws. But the rifles stayed cleaned. The knives stayed sharp, because even if peace had come, they knew it could ride away just as fast. One morning, a rider came by the gate. Young man, clean coat, wide eyes. You Jedediah Kane?" he asked. Jed nodded. "They say you put down Gideon Pike with one shot to the heart." Jed didn't answer. "They say you and that woman fought off 6 men and sent the devil himself to hell." Still, Jed said nothing. The rider hesitated. "Is it true?" Jed looked up from the fence post he was mending. Clara stood in the doorway behind him, watching, her hands dusted in flour. He said only, "It's done." And that was the last word spoken on the matter. They say legends grow in the cracks where truth used to be. They say if you ride past Perdition Creek at sundown, you can hear children's laughter on the wind. And sometimes, just sometimes, the sound of a rifle bolt sliding home. They say an old widower once took in a woman and her 3 starving daughters. And they say she changed his life. That's it.